Hey, welcome guys. So today we have finished our Takom Tiger 1. This is the mid-production with the Zimmerit molded into it. We have some 3D printed tracks from T-Rex. We have some 3D printed parts from, I called it Fibbleworks in my review. And then I saw someone else do a review and I think they said Fibbleworks. I don't know what it is, but I think you get the point. We have some nice upgrade parts on this. There's some nice upgrade parts that come in the set, like this metal gun barrel. We have some nice pieces of stowage and things, like this kind of road wheel covered in a tarp, and just different accessories and options. Now, this kit wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. If you can tell, I don't have the tracks attached to the side of the turret. As one example, there were a few moments of building this kit that I didn't really enjoy, and there were others that I really did enjoy. It's kind of almost exactly the same experience that I had with the Takom half track. So maybe this is just what you get from Takom: terrible instructions, a very well detailed kit, and some slight fit issues. We'll get into those on the build. I noted all of them in the instructions as I went along. So let's flip it over and let's see what we got here. So first off, we are going to, in step number 1, be building these exhaust fans. And this is a pretty widely known issue, I think, with this kit. Just from the other, I haven't watched a ton of builds on this, but I've watched a couple from like Champion Scale and others. And this is something that people note right away. These don't fit. They especially don't fit with the locator pins that are inside of the bathtub style hole. I'm building them up anyways because I wanted to see if I could get them to fit. Spoiler alert, I can't, and I end up throwing them in the trash can. They're not really seen, although it would have been a nice detail. This just shows you if you put them, I use some sticky tack to kind of get them in place, and that's how big of a gap there is. That's if you put them in the locator pins. If you put them slightly further back where they're supposed to be, there's still an issue. To be honest, there's still a big gap. It's maybe half as big as that, but I don't know. Not really worth it in my opinion. That's kind of frustrating thing number 1 is I wanted them in there because you can see them if you look. It was just, again, it was that nice detail, but you won't see them if you don't really stare into it. So, and I don't think most other kits would come with it. So then we have to get a good amount of stuff glued to the lower hull here. Basically spaces where our sprockets and things are going to go, and just some of the suspension elements. So it's nothing too crazy, and I will say everything does fit really nicely on the lower part of this kit. The Zimmerit already looks awesome. This is one of those exciting parts of at least the build for me, was seeing the first piece of Zimmerit going on, and just a reminder as to why I bought this kit. And why probably a lot of people have bought this kit. It's got to be the Zimmerit. The accessories and things that come are great, that come with it are great, but it's got to be all about that Zimmerit because not many other kits have it. All right, so getting into the suspension assembly here. For whatever reason, every couple of these don't fit very well into the lower hull. I think it was an issue with the lower hull, but as I kind of swapped them around, the swing arms, some of them fit in holes perfectly and some wouldn't fit in others. So you have to play with that a little bit, and then you have to really make sure that they're pushed in all the way. Because you will notice that some of them, they kind of bend the plastic to get in place, but they need to really snap and click into place in order to be in the right spot. The nice thing is that we get a little locator mark on those swing arms, so they have to go into a certain place. So you don't really have to worry too much about the wheels touching the ground, which is nice. And then we're just going to attach this piece on the front for the front sprocket. Something to note, as you see, I tried a couple times to get that to kind of click in. There are a lot of locating marks on this kit, which is nice. They're just really shallow. If I compare it to a Tamiya kit or Tamiya, they're really, really shallow, and you have to work a little bit to get them to sit in the right place. Some of them are better than others, but it is what it is. At least we have them. And then we have to assemble our sprockets here, which is very, very easy. Again, very shallow locating marks on those, but nothing too crazy. Now, there aren't any poly caps with this kit. And I have to imagine that's because it has link and length tracks, but I have not attached the rear or front sprockets or idlers just because I have those 3D printed tracks. So we'll kind of glue those in. They sit well enough that they'll be fine, but we'll glue them as we go. This little piece in my hand, this was 3 small pieces, and while I'd say 95% of the decal in this kit, or the detail in this kit is great, there are a couple pieces like this that are just honestly unnecessary in my opinion. In order to cut those 3 little pieces out cleanly is impossible. Even with, you know, I know there's maybe better ones out there, but I have the Tamiya Precision nippers. What's going to happen with this Takom plastic is you're going to sand it down, the pieces are going to blend together, and then when you put Tamiya extra thin cement on there, it melts the plastic a lot. It melts it a lot more than it would melt Tamiya plastic, and it just ends up looking like a blob of a piece. And I think they easily could have given us a little bit, just one molded piece there. I like the idea of adding it on as additional detail, but neither here nor there. Just that was kind of another moment of frustration. Now, you'll notice I am building this out of order, pretty much because I was waiting on the 3D printed parts from Fibble or Fibleworks. I just didn't want to wait. I wanted to get the building, so I figured I'd start on the upper hull. Now, the upper hull construction is really, really nice in this kit. Just the way that these screens and everything is going to go together. It's just satisfying, and they did it in a way, again, where there's a ton of detail. We do have just a few photo etch pieces in this kit, and if you want to, the way I built it is the only photo etch you have to use is these screens, which is pretty much the only photo etch I want to use. I think you're supposed to bend them a little bit. I don't have a photo etch bender, so I just put them on flat. It'll be good enough for my purposes. But there's nothing in the instructions that tell you whether you should or not. Then something to note in the instructions here is it tells you to put these 2 pieces of photo etch on the rear. It never once tells you in the instructions to put them on these other 2 grills that you can see that at this moment don't have photo etch. And I guess I was just waiting for the instructions to tell me, but all of a sudden I got to the end of the kit and I was like, wait a second, why do I have these 2 pieces of photo etch? I looked and I said, well, clearly they go there, right? But it's just something to point out. There's not a single point in the instructions where they tell you to put those on, and it's definitely easier to put them on now than it is later. I was still able to get them on, but if you are building this kit, just put them on at the same time. Don't wait and think that these instructions are going to do you any favors. Not to bash on them too hard, but the instructions are not good. And you do have to kind of use your modeling brain, which, you know, we're all inhaling paint fumes, so how good are our modeling brains? But these hatches, this is an odd thing that they chose to do. There's no locating marks, so you just have to do your best guesswork to line them up. I don't know why they don't have locating marks. The other hatches do. These just do not. So another kind of moment where I'm not sure why they did it the way they did, when there's so many good things in this kit, and then there's so many kind of odd moments. But anyways, then we have some tow cables to build up. I do really like the kind of metal wire they've given us. It does require super glue, and that's just the super glue I have, the Gorilla Glue. I think there's other better, like slower setting ones. So if you use the regular old one like I do, you just have to be really quick with it, and it doesn't really leave a lot of room for messing up. A couple other small pieces that are going to go on here, some covers for the periscopes. Nothing too crazy. Then attaching these little clamps that are going to hold down the tow cables. This is very difficult, and you have to do it very slowly. I didn't film it because it was just, there was so much kind of work that I had to put into it. This might have taken me an hour just to get those tow cables on there. And then you have these little braces that, kind of clip the tow cables in. They don't fit. They kind of fit, and with enough extra thin and pushing and prodding and things, you can kind of get the plastic to melt together, and they're going to hold on one end. I try to do my best to make them connect on the outside, and then on the inside they're not really connected, but you won't see the inside, so that's kind of my workaround to that. Now we're going to start back on the lower part of the hull, and we're going to get some more Zimmerit on, which is again the exciting part of this kit. I would recommend, as you'll see in a second here, I would recommend clamping these pieces. The long pieces in this kit, they don't look warped. They don't feel warped when you take them off, but when you go to attach them, it's like they're very slightly warped. And so with that, it does take some clamping and things like that. And ultimately, I would say this took me about a week to build. There's a lot of stuff like this because the Takom plastic dries different with the extra thin, that you have to just set it and walk away for a while, even if it's just 30 minutes to let some of these small pieces set up, to get some of this clamping done, whatever it is. Don't rush it. It's not worth it. I know we all do rush at times, but and then this tow cable on the side ends up looking really nice. That's a really nice detail that they were able to mold in one piece. The only problem with it, I broke it one time trying to get it off the sprue. Luckily was able to glue it back together without any sort of noticeable mark. It's just very fragile, and when you're fumbling around with all those pieces in the box, all the sprues, it is really easy for it to get broken. And a couple more small pieces here. Before you fit the tow cable, as I'm looking at it now, I would fit the fire extinguisher in there. I had to kind of pry up the tow cable and move it around a little bit. It doesn't fit all that well. So just keep that in mind. All right. So now I think this is officially where I run out of construction to do, and I was waiting for my 3D parts to get here. So I started constructing the T-Rex tracks that I have. Now, these tracks are great in terms of detail. They go together very easily, and I did play around in my spare time with the tracks that come with this kit, and I can confirm what I heard about the tracks in this kit was they were a nightmare, and I can confirm I would not want to build the tracks that come with this kit, which is a little bit disappointing if you were looking for a $30 Tiger kit with Zimmerit that was ready to go. I don't know. I don't think they were worth it. Or is it worth spending $50 to get upgraded tracks? Also the same question, right? Like, who knows? But
If you have the money, this definitely makes the kit nicer, at least more fun to build. That being said, I've had great experiences with the Comet and the P4 tracks that I built from T-Rex. These, the the little bars that you put in, just the little pins, just fall out. They don't click in, which is really, really odd. So I've had to put a bunch of them back into place, and I'm really just trying not to touch them until I get them painted and hoping that the paint ultimately makes them stick. But just a little bit odd because the other two pairs of tracks were so, so good from T-Rex, and these were pretty good, but ultimately annoying. Then we have our road wheels, and I'm just going to go ahead and glue them all on. I did originally think that I was going to glue them together into kind of one big road wheel mass, but then I thought about the DOSWork Panther that I just built, and I didn't do that with those. I did, and then I didn't even use it. So I'm just going to go ahead. We're probably going to paint these up the same exact way. And I was able to do it while gluing them all on. It's not my preferred method, but for the sake of time, I'm probably going to spend a lot of time painting this kit. So we'll just do our best with it and hope that it comes out, looking good enough. You do have to, because the locating marks are so shallow all over this kit, you really do have to make sure that the road wheels are flat, at least the outward facing ones. Some of the inside facing ones are a little bit wonky, but just really make sure that the outside ones are there, because those are obviously going to be the most important. And then the ones in the middle where our tracks are going to run through, of course. But this is another moment where you have to just let it set and walk away for probably at least an hour. I'm also using the slower setting glue, but I noticed with Takom, this glue takes even longer than the extra thin to really set. Now, the biggest frustration I had with this kit as we build up the rear plate for the lower hull, it has step 12 where you do a couple things to the lower hull, and then it has 12.1 and 12.2. And in 12.1 and 12.2, it has you drill many, many holes. Now, part of this is absolute user error. I would happily admit that. It's not my first experience with user error. What it doesn't tell you is 12.1 is option A and 12.2 is option B, for kits that you're building. It wasn't until I had drilled out all the holes and looked at 12-3 that I noticed, oh no, I drilled too many holes. Now, it ultimately doesn't look that bad, to be honest. And once we paint it, it won't really be noticeable. But super, super frustrating moment. I had to walk away, I think, for a day or two at that point because I was just very annoyed at that. There's no directions that tell you option A or B. I'm getting annoyed just thinking about it. You would assume after 12 that 12.1 is the next step and 12.2 is the next one. So I'm not that used to building Takom kits. That's part of it. Tamiya will tell you option A, option B. Academy does the same. These were just different, and I just got tripped up for a second. But absolutely worth noting if you are building this kit. You have to keep looking ahead. You can't just necessarily trust the build, unfortunately. If you do make the same mistake as I did, I was able to correct it by putting in putty from the inside and kind of pushing it outward until it was flush. It does obviously ruin the Zimmerit, but with a knife you can kind of fix that putty. Plus the holes are so small, it's not really going to look like you drilled huge holes in the back. I don't know, it looks like bullet holes, I guess. But we can make that story up and tell someone. At least I can. Then we get our jack in place there. And we almost have at least the first half of the rear plate finished up, at least all the plastic that's going to go on here. So now we're going to get into some of these 3D printed parts. These are the Fibble or Fible work parts that we're going to be putting on here. And as you can see, I had two different options. I know I didn't show this one in the review, but this is the open position of the exhaust. And I just think there's so much more detail because it's open. So I decided to go with those. It almost snaps into place. It's so tight. All you have to do is a little bit of super glue on the inside and it's perfect. Now, the only problem, and I don't think you'd have this problem on other kits, but because of the Zimmerit, we're going to end up having to cover up these parts at least somewhat, which is a little unfortunate. Right, as you can see, those missing spots of the Zimmerit, I end up at the end going back and putting the covers over them, which it doesn't fully cover up the 3D part, but it definitely, I wanted them to shine, and now you can only see half of them. So the detail is still there if you look. It's just, I didn't think I would have a problem with the Zimmerit, but that presented one. I also didn't know I was going to get those parts and whatnot, but ultimately it just makes it all look better, which is good. This kit does give you really detailed gun breeches, or the gun breech for the main gun, but then also for this interior machine gun. It's really, really nice. The only downside is there's no interior, so I'm not going to leave any of these hatches open. I did kind of a quick hack job on the gun just to give it some weight, just in case it was supposed to be built like that. As you can see, I have it 90% built up, but I'm never going to see it, so I didn't go ahead and put every single part in there. I just got it good enough so anyone watching can kind of see the construction. Then we'll go ahead and we'll attach that front plate, which pretty much just slots right into position there. I did have to attach it left, let the glue set, and then attach the right. That was another moment where the pieces felt a little warped. And then also on the side skirt, this is actually a really difficult piece to get to sit and to get the glue to stay. Even after it felt like I glued it 100 times, it still was not glued. As you can see, you push one side down and the other side gets wonky. So there are indicator marks here, but nothing clicks into place. It just floats. And because it's a little warped, it floats out of position. It's a little bit annoying, right? I get it. They had to mold the Zimmerit. There's only so much they can do. But just something to watch out for again, if you are building this. We have a couple more pieces to attach here where the those, I always forget what those clips are called, where those clips are going to clip onto. And then you can kind of see the side skirts aren't really attached, which this is how they would attach on a real kit. So for accuracy, same with these rear fenders. Super, super accurate from the photos I've seen. But there's not a big attachment point. As you can see, it's only this little tiny bar in the rear fenders. And it just makes them not sit in there too securely. And they do like to bend if you end up hitting them with your hand or something like that. So make sure you just set the model down after you glue those pieces on and walk away for a little bit, because they don't attach all that securely and you really want to make sure that glue is set up. So here's an example of the 12-1 and 12-2. Now this is for holes on the upper side. I just went ahead, X them off. There you can see the fan just doesn't fit. Even if as you can see, I got rid of all the locating marks inside. They're going into the trash. I kind of had enough with those pieces at that point. But I'm not going to drill any of the holes that they asked me to drill in those steps. Instead, I'm just going to do it from the top. It's easy enough to see where they need to go. I don't want to over drill, especially into this part. The back, I can put mud and things on and whatnot. The top, I don't want to mess up, so we're just going to leave that for later. There are a lot of seams when you attach that upper hull. As you'll see later in this build, you'll see a pretty good amount of putty that I had to put around. Not that there shouldn't be a seam there. I think there actually should, but there was a noticeable gap almost all the way around. So pretty decent fit issue there, unfortunately. Now we're going to start working on our turret, and it has us working on the upper part first. Now the periscope of this kit is really, really nice the way it goes together. The locating marks, the periscopes themselves, everything about this, and I know it's a kind of a silly piece to give them so much commendation for, but I don't know, something about it just went together really, really well and just felt right. The only thing I would point out, and I don't know enough about the exact angle of the cupola on a Tiger 1 to tell you if this is true or not. Somebody out there watching this probably does. Apparently it's sitting at the wrong angle. There is a locator mark for attaching it. Now, I use the locator mark. The only thing you would have to do is, I think, take that mark off if you wanted it to sit correctly. But I did hear and read that it is incorrect. And when you put it on, you'll see what I mean. If you compare it to another Tiger or the Panther kit that we built that has the same exact cupola, at least close enough, you will see that the angle seems off. Right? It doesn't look like the other kits that I built. So if accuracy is your thing, definitely keep that in mind. Although you'll probably notice it while you're dry fitting. That piece was very difficult to get in there. Really, really tight fit. And that is a moment where you kind of have to use the old glue and pinch method, which you will have to do a couple times on this kit for sure. And as you can see here, we do get those locating marks, but even as I just touch it with that glue, it's moving a little bit. It doesn't want to sit in the locating marks because they're so shallow, which just leads to a little bit of difficulty when building this kit. But nothing too crazy. Then we're going to get the mantlet built up. And again, there are some pieces that are going to go on the inside of this mantlet that I'm going to end up leaving off. You do get a really detailed gun breech. And again, I'm only going to build up 90% of it because there's no figure that comes with this kit. We don't have a full interior, so I'm not going to display anything open. If you had a figure that could go in this kit, it is like the perfect amount of detail with the gun breech, and I think there's 2 seats in there that you could do it. There's nothing on the ground level, like the float thing, the bottom, the lower hull of the tank. So don't look that far down, but there is enough in the turret that you could, which is really nice. Also, small issue there. They call for U26. It's U29. That one's pretty easy to figure out because you've already used U26. But just another example of a small kind of how do they make that mistake issue. I would assume that when these model kits are made, someone goes through and builds them after. It kind of feels like they don't, because that's an issue you would fix and be like, hey, that's the wrong part, but not my job, so I won't worry about it too hard. Also, the ring on the inside does not fit. You kind of just, as you can see, there's a big gap on the back of it. It doesn't really end up mattering, but it is what it is. It's not a necessary piece if you're not going to open the hatch and the cupola, because that's where the seats are going to go. But for me, it doesn't do anything to the construction of the tank. It's just another step. Then once we get that in there, we can glue just the sides of the mantlet, and that's going to give us the ability for the turret to rotate up and down. Now this is a cool little detail. On the box that goes in the rear of the turret, we get this little piece to mount a like a little tarp or baggie onto. And if you wanted to, you could display that door up, and then you'd have the little baggie almost at the top of that compartment, which is really cool. It's a cool little detail that they added in there for, someone that was doing maybe a diorama. You can see it right there sticking up. That's cool. You don't have to insert it from the top. Just a nice little piece of engineering there. Unfortunately, we're going to glue that hatch shut on ours and, cover up that nice little part. But then we'll go ahead, we'll attach our cupola on here. And I am running out of extra thin, that's why I keep shaking the bottle. Try to get some more on the applicator there. And then we're going to go ahead and attach the top of the turret, which, as you can see right there are small gaps towards the front of it. Now, a little bit of putty fills that seam. It's unfortunate because it's right next to that welding detail, and it's really, really difficult to get putty in there without covering some of the weld. So, slight fit issue, kind of takes away from some of the detail there, but that one wasn't that big of a deal. It's not the end of the day. Then we're going to go ahead and put the first part of our turret on here. This piece obviously being plastic. The rest of it is going to be metal, except for the barrel here, which I'm using. This is one of the Fibble or Fibblework barrels that I got. Really great detail, and the barrel, the muzzle brake that comes in this kit is like 5 or 6 pieces, all small. It looked like it was going to be a nightmare to build. So really, really nice to have a 3D printed part to just glue on once, not worry about anything, and just get this put into place. Now, they give us a metal gun barrel, and there's no indicator mark, so you just have to guess. It's really, really nice that they give us the aluminum gun barrel, but I had to immediately pull it out and put it back in one time because it was just so slightly off. All right, the tracks that don't fit on the side of the turret. Now, I've extensively looked at other people's builds, and what they must do is those little hooks at the bottom of it, don't put those on. If you want the tracks to go on the turret, the simple answer is just don't put those little hooks on. There will be a gap in the Zimmerit where those are, but the tracks will cover up 95% of that gap, and you will not notice it unless you look, from the bottom up. I put those in there because I thought they looked great, and I thought the tracks were going to slide in. They don't. So pretty frustrating there, because the tracks will definitely make the turret look a lot cooler, but it is what it is. It's too late for me. Anyways, we have some stowage and things that we have to get sanded up and ready to go. We do get some nice tarps and things. The elongated tarps that are going to go on the side, I ended up getting them in there somehow, but there's no real area for them to go into. They just kind of float. Now, I played with them a little bit and got them not to float too much, but I don't know. Those pieces you could definitely go without. The rear, the road wheel that's covered in the tarp is like fantastic and has an exact spot it's going to go over and is cut out perfectly. Kind of weird that they would give you like so much perfect detail in one piece and then not in the other. Also, that rolled up tarp there that I was just holding glues together great, looks great, but it's supposed to go on the turret and it's not curved. So it ends up, it doesn't have a sag to it, like it's sagging off the turret. I'm not going to use it. It ends up being a little bit disappointing of a accessory, if I'm being honest. As you can see here, this is the best piece that comes in the kit, the best aftermarket piece, easily. There will be a little bit of the gap that I had to use some filler on the backside, but nothing really that crazy at all. That one's pretty much ready to go. Another small oddity about this kit, and it's a good and bad thing, when a turret has the two locating marks where you have to kind of turn it 90 degrees, put it down, and then twist it back. It's nice because you could lift the model up by the turret. Now, this has none of those marks. So if you pull up on the turret, it's just going to come right off the kit. The nice thing about that is you don't have to worry about scratching the paint when you twist the turret. So I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, but it's worth pointing out. It's a little bit strange. I will, once I have it painted, I will end up gluing the turret in place just because of that. But here you go. This was a super long build compared to a Tamiya or Tamiya kit. There's a ton of detail in here. As you can see, we have our bucket and some jerry cans and other accessories. I do have a little bit of cleanup left to do on this kit, but here it is. Here's our finished product. I'm going to leave the tracks off and paint them separately. The sprockets and idlers are also not attached at this point, just to make getting the tracks on easier. I also haven't attached that stowage or anything yet, except for the rolls on the side, but she looks great. She really does. I hope I don't knock those antennas off. I really, really do. I wish I had the tracks on the side. All that being said, the detail definitely shows. When I said earlier that it reminds me a lot of the Takom half track, there were moments where I wanted to stop building it, moments where I wanted to throw it in the trash, and then there were other moments where I, put a piece in and I smiled, and it was like, yeah, this is a great kit. It's just these ebb and flows, these ups and downs that I've experienced with Takom, but I reminded myself when I finished that half track, it looked amazing. So I kind of kept that in the back of my mind. As you can see, there's filler all along, the top of the turret and then the top of the upper hull. I don't want to erase that seam fully because I do think there is a seam there, but there was a gap almost the whole way around. Anyways, it's a very inexpensive kit. I haven't forgotten that. It's like $30 to $35. Plus, Andy's Hobby Headquarters keeps having those big box specials where you can get like 2 or 3 for $25 each. If you want a Tiger with Zimmerit, I don't know of a better one. Does it have its issues? Sure. Is it an amazing product for the price? If you take out the directions, yes. I am personally very much done with Takom instructions. I'd almost rather just try to build the kit myself. Just, a bunch of pieces on the board and fit them together as I figure they would go. Because I'm used to Tamiya and, other kits that the instructions are correct. So, I don't know. Anyways, that's my own issue. It was a great build, all things considered. I wouldn't recommend this kit to a beginner by any means. I would recommend this to someone that has built at least multiple models that really needs a Tiger with Zimmerit in their collection. So, next up, we are going to be painting and weathering this kit. So if you haven't already, I would please ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. That will be one of our upcoming videos. We'll be doing many, many other build and paint and weathering and reviews and all sorts of videos like that. Anything scale model based. I also have a fun trip coming up that I'm planning that I won't give any spoilers, but it's something local to me that has a lot of real life examples. And I actually haven't seen anyone else do it on YouTube, so pretty psyched about that. And we'll get this kit finished up. We'll get our Comet is already in the spray booth, so that's somewhere halfway along the lines. But I will leave you guys with the finished product for the last minute or so here. If you have any comments, if you've built this kit, you have any experiences, anything at all that you want to comment, please feel free. I do read them all. I try to respond to them all. I give them all a heart, except, one guy who said something negative. I just gave him a thumbs up. He doesn't deserve a heart. But anyways, I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you in the next video.